I feel inspired to almost act as if this is a little podcast this morning, podcast introduction. Perhaps it's CWR's podcast, The Spirituality of Communications. And I'd like to introduce our guest on the program this morning. Gary Loncki has been a communications professional and an award-winning journalist and editor for more than 40 years. His career includes work in television, radio, and as a communications director and editor for the Catholic Diocese of Erie, Pennsylvania. For the past 13 years, he has served as regional communications director for the Sisters of Mercy community of New York, Pennsylvania West, which includes Erie, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and Rochester. What you might not know, Gary is a licensed lay preacher in the Episcopal Church and a certified spiritual director. He has taught homily writing, otherwise known as homiletics, and public speaking, and he facilitates spiritual groups and guided meditations aimed at helping people heal and become their authentic selves. He has been a CWR member since 2007, so this is a real nod to the wisdom among ourselves that he is speaking with us this morning. Many of you have come to know Gary over the years, so you will understand completely when I say that having coffee or breakfast with Gary quickly takes on the feel of being a guest on his podcast. He is a loyal fan of the Green Bay Packers football team and the Boston Bruins hockey team, and an avid fan of the native Southwest, a passion he and I both share. Aside from enjoying time with his family, Gary is an inspirational speaker in the Erie area and also gives historic presentations on the Second World War and the Titanic. But I can assure you today that his talk will not leave us with a sinking feeling. You like that? But I will assure you also that it will be spiritually uplifting. So please join me in welcoming today's guest on the podcast, Gary Loncki. You're welcome.
Hello. Well, good morning. Good morning to everyone in the room, and good morning to those who are joining us today via live stream. Special welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for staying around. You know, this is the last day of the conference. It's been a great week. But to be honest, I usually skip the last day of the conference because I have to go back to Erie and catch these connecting flights. But they said I have to talk to you today, so I'm here. I want to thank Stephanie for that wonderful, heartfelt introduction. Stephanie and I have been friends for so many years. And Stephanie, I want you to know that I so appreciate your friendship and your professionalism. Stephanie is one of the most creative people I know. Now, I know all of us over time have done something for Catholic Sisters Week in our communities and our areas. Well, in Erie, we have a collaborative effort. The Sisters of Mercy and the Sisters of St. Joseph of Northwestern Pennsylvania and the Benedictine Sisters of Erie, we all work together to celebrate Catholic Sisters Week. And the spearhead of those efforts, and they've been very, very successful, has been Stephanie. She comes up with these creative ideas, and we all work on strategies together. And if you have something to do, Stephanie is relentless in making sure that you do what you're supposed to do. But you know, it all works out. Stephanie mentioned that I worked for the Catholic Diocese of Erie many years ago, and that was like the mid-1980s. That was so long ago, so many years ago. And you know, I was looking at some old photos the other day, and I came across one of me driving to work in those years, the mid-1980s, driving to work at the Catholic Diocese of Erie. And that was me, you know. Well, I told you it was a few years ago. I want to thank CWR for inviting me to speak at this 25th anniversary conference. I want you to know that I consider this opportunity to be a privilege, and to be on the same card as Joan Chittister. Wow. Joan, of course, is from Erie, and we know each other. Now, this is a true story. When I was editor of the Catholic paper in Erie, I received a letter to the editor. It was in a small envelope. And I opened this handwritten letter. And it was from an elderly woman who was known to be conservative and traditional in her views. And here's what the letter said. Dear editor, Gary Loncki and Joan Chittister should run away together and start their own church. To this day, I have no idea what I did or didn't do to warrant the letter. Years later, after I left my job at the diocese and got to know Joan, she laughed. And after a few seconds, I looked at her and I said, so when are we leaving? In my more than 40 years of communications, from broadcasting to news reporting to print journalism and to directing a communications office, I have belonged to several professional organizations along the way. And I have to say, honestly, that Communicators for Women Religious is by far the best. I attended my first CWR conference in Rapid City, South Dakota in 2007. Is anyone here? Yeah, a few hands are going up. That was such an incredible conference. I'm into things Native American, and that spirituality and history and Native American wisdom. We were in the energy of the Black Hills, and that conference had such a powerful personal vibe for me. For me, it was the first time in a while I had been attending a professional conference, and I felt so welcomed by the team. And that's when it was NCNWR, and the first one to welcome me was Susan Oxley. Susan, are you still here, or did you head back? There's Susan. Yeah, oh, there she is in the back. A smiling face, Susan welcomed me to NCNWR, and we've been friends ever since. And she's from Wisconsin, and you know what that means? She, like me, is a Green Bay Packer fan. And the nights out for that conference, weren't they incredible, those of you who were there? We went to the Dances with Wolves movie set for a Chuck Wagon dinner and to tour the set. Dances with Wolves is my favorite movie of all time. So that was cool. And then we went to go see Mount Rushmore at night. And then if you remember, our reception was held at a 3-floor Native American store selling artifacts and CDs and books and all of these things. It was such a fantastic time. And new friendships developed. Russ Mansell, Russ, are you still here or did you head back home? Russ is, I saw him sitting at the table in Rapid City, and I went to sit with him, and we introduced ourselves. And there were so few guys there, just me and Russ and another guy somewhere. We formed a men's support group. Oh, Rob was there. Hi, Rob. Yeah. Well, Rob was not part of our men's support group, but we got to be friends. And Rob and I are friends. But here's the thing. Where's Russ from? He's from Wisconsin. And you know what that means? He's a Green Bay Packer fan. You know, there has been a consistent thread woven through the fabric of my time with CWR, and it's all of what I mentioned, this great energy. For all of those past and present CWR members and organizers, let us show our appreciation for CWR on its 25th anniversary. CWR is a very caring group of professionals. When we were in Albuquerque, New Mexico for our conference a few years ago, my son Aaron, at the time, had been living in northern New Mexico, and he had a serious health issue regarding his appendix. Stephanie Hall, who chaired that conference, was speaking on a Thursday morning and shared with the group what my family and I had been going through. So many of you came up to me to say that you were praying for Aaron and my family. And I have to tell you, that meant so much to me. Aaron was released from the hospital the day before, and he and my wife drove to Albuquerque to be at the conference. And he met some of you. And at every conference I have been to, a few of you will come up to me and say, "How's your boy? How's Aaron?" Well, I'm happy to report that Aaron is doing quite well. Currently, he is working for the mayor's office in the city of Erie as director of marketing and special events. And he just ran the highly successful Celebrate Erie Festival, his second festival. And he even got his old man to go up on stage and MC the bands on one of the stages. I introduced, I think it was like 16 bands over 3 days. It was so much fun. Well, here's Aaron today. And some people say he looks like, I don't know. But I have to say that for receptions at City Hall where they need wine, they just give him water and he does the rest. The title of my talk this morning is The Gifts of God for the People of God, a spirituality of communications. How many of you like coffee? A lot of hands. We're communicators, right? A lot of hands are going up. You know, I saw this mug the other day. I was in a gift shop somewhere, and you know, Halloween's coming up. And they had this Halloween-themed mug. And what it said was, "Hocus pocus, I need coffee to focus." That's me. I love coffee, always have. And not just any coffee. I've become very selective with the coffee I drink. Anyone here have a Keurig coffee maker with the K-cups? Yeah, a few of you. Some people say that the greatest invention of all time was the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg in 1440. But I think the invention of the Keurig coffee maker is right up there too. And my hope is that they will make environmentally friendly K-cups soon. Some do, but unfortunately it's not the coffee I drink, so I hope they're working on it. When it comes to coffee, I love the dark roasts, I love the stronger coffees, and each morning I have some different ones from which to choose. Now, this is one of my favorites, Obsidian, and it's made by the Caribou Coffee Company. And Caribou has a slogan on every box of its Obsidian coffee. Life is short, so stay awake for it. Life is short, so stay awake for it. Isn't that a great saying about life? In other words, be aware. Enjoy life as it comes your way. Learn from it. Take advantage of the opportunities that life gives you that make life worth living. And don't miss the present moment. The poet Rumi wrote that God comes to us in 100 ways in every moment. And never forget that a divine energy that we call God is in it all. So what does that have to do with communications? Everything. Absolutely everything. Here we are, communicators for communities of women religious, Catholic sisters, and we bring with us a variety of gifts, communication skills, and experiences. We've read documents and articles on church communications. We write stories and we take photos and we shoot video. We work with the news media. We keep our sisters and donors and the wider community informed, and we tell our good news. Well, that sounds like us, doesn't it? And it's all good. But I would like to focus on an aspect of communications that is too often overlooked. How well are we communicating internally? Not in our jobs, not in our relationships with others, but more importantly, with ourselves. Are we in touch with our souls, that sacred place where the Spirit of God is at work? Are we paying attention to where our souls may be calling us? In our roles as communicators in religious communities of women, we are trying to use our gifts the best way we know how, sometimes in very difficult circumstances. And the gospel of Jesus and the teachings and charisms of our religious communities call us to be light in a world that needs to have its dark places exposed and healed. We are the ones who, through our communication work and our inner spiritual compasses, tell the stories of women religious standing with the poor, those who have no voice, immigrants, women and children, those thirsty and hungry. By using our gifts, we help them stand for the earth against racism and anything that devalues human life. All of this to give witness that God is alive and at work in the world through all of us. But to be more effective as communicators, we need to keep an open communication with who we are. What is going on with us? What is God doing with us? And that means our authentic selves, who we are in Christ. Joan Chittister once wrote, "The spiritual task of life is to feed hope. Hope is not something to be found outside of us. It lies in the spiritual life we cultivate within. The whole purpose of wrestling with life is to be transformed into the self we are meant to become, to step out of our false securities and allow our creating God to go on creating in us." Here is what our souls call us to. Be your authentic self. Be true to who you are and live your truth. We need to be true to who we are, who God made us to be, and to stand in that truth. Now, sometimes that means our lives are not going to be all sunshine and rainbows. There will be pain as we are taken out of our comfort zones. Hard decisions will have to be made, and life will change. In a previous job, I worked for many years collaborating with good people doing good things. But I saw some things behind the scenes that I wasn't comfortable with. I couldn't do this anymore, and after 18 years, I left my job, and I didn't have another job to fall onto. I had to be true to myself. I had to be standing in my truth, and I have to tell you that felt good. But the cost was my job. Well, over time, things fell into place for me. I ended up working for the Sisters of Mercy, first as in the regional community of Erie, and then for the region. And I have to say, one of the best decisions I ever made was going to that job that I left. And one of the best decisions I made was leaving that job when I had to. It's very much what Father Richard Rohr says. You have order, and then you have disorder, and then reorder. If we are aligned with who God made us to be and what God is showing us and inviting us to, I submit that we can be better communicators, better doers of the gospel, and better lovers and animators of all creation. How? Spiritual writer Paula D'Arcy offers a simple but profound clue. God comes to us disguised as our life. Father Richard Rohr, who spoke to us in Albuquerque 4 years ago, said, "God is the inner energy within the soul, saying, 'Become who you are. There is still more of you to be discovered, forgiven, and loved.'" The point to all of this is that God comes to us in our relationships, what happens to us in life, our desires, our failures, our successes, our wounds, in other words, everything. And it's so important to be engaged in life. Spirituality isn't really so much about dogmas and scripture and religious rules and protocols. Of course, that's part of it. But mainly, spirituality is about awareness. Awareness, having the eyes to see the Spirit moving in and through our lives. One key to this sharper vision is paying attention to what inspires us, that positive energy that just lights us up, that energy that calls out to us, inviting us to see what's out there. These elements give us good energy, creativity, inspiration, and make life worth living. And God is in it all. Unfortunately, too many people never get there. They live in a prison of regrets. Some years ago, Nadine Stair of Louisville, Kentucky, who at the time was 85 years old, wrote the following after someone asked her how she would have lived her life differently if she had the chance. And here is what she wrote. If I had to live life over, I dare to make more mistakes next time. I'd relax, I'd limber up. I would be sillier than I have been this trip. I would take fewer things seriously. I would take more chances. I would climb more mountains and swim more rivers. I would eat more ice cream and less beans. I would perhaps have more actual troubles, and I'd have fewer imaginary ones. You see, I'm one of those people who live sensibly and sanely hour after hour, day after day. Oh, I've had my moments, and if I had to do it over again, I would have more of them. In fact, I try to have nothing else, just moments one after the other, instead of living so many years ahead of each day. If I had to live my life over, I would start barefoot earlier in the spring and stay that way until later in the fall. I would go to more dances. I would ride more merry-go-rounds. I would pick more daisies. Nadine Stair calls us to live passionate, inspired lives, and so does the one who created us. And there are so many ways to do this. Which are the ways for you? What inspires you? And before you can live an inspired life, you need to get in touch with yourself first. And I want to take you through a guided meditation to help you do that this morning. In this exercise, I will ask you questions. Listen to each question, and I'll give you a few seconds after each question to reflect. Now pay attention to the first thing you think of when I ask the question. Do not judge or control your answer. The answer or answers that come to you likely are your truth. Let's have some fun. Get as comfortable as you can in your chairs. Both feet on the ground. Place your hands on your lap. And now close your eyes. At your own pace, take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for a moment. And then let it out slowly through your mouth. And just relax into the silence. And one more time, at your own pace, take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for a moment. And let it out slowly through your mouth, relaxing into the silence. And with your eyes still closed, listen carefully to each question and pay attention to the very first thing that comes up. Don't judge it. Here we go. Who or what brings excitement and positive energy to your life? Who or what drains your energy? Who or what inspires you or lifts you up? What passions or interests give you vibrant energy. What gives you hope? What makes you smile? And finally, fill in the blank. For me, life is worth living because now at your own pace, take a slow, deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for a moment. And let it out slowly from your mouth. Slowly come back to the room, and when you are ready, you can open your eyes. Welcome back. How did that work out for you? What came to you? Were there any surprises? Take a few moments just to write down any insights you might have had from that exercise. It helps to take some steps on the journey. Getting in touch with yourself and living an inspiring life is a choice that only you can make. But there are countless ways of showing up for life. We are all different and we respond to life differently. I have selected 5 ways. But before I go there, I want to briefly highlight some other ways that can help create an environment, a sacred space for discovering yourself. And from these, take what works for you and leave the rest. Nurture a belief in God. For example, it helps to have an active relationship with God, the creator of us all, the divine, the great spirit. For those in 12-step programs, our higher power. Holding an image of the Holy One as the one who loves you no matter what, who was waiting to forgive you when you fall, and helps you get up to continue life again, is a spiritually healthy way of living. And then, like a mystic, when you see or sense God in everyone and everything, meaning that you take God out of the box and let God be God, life changes in a good way. Be part of a faith community where there are people with whom you can worship and have genuine support. A community that invites you to be who you are and live your spiritual life as life-giving, not life-draining. Promote healthy relationships. It helps to have relationships in which you can be yourself and allow others to be who they are. These are relationships where you can feel that you're at home because they allow you to laugh and to be honest and to share about your life and ideas and thoughts without judgment. These are relationships of support and respect. And it also helps to get physical. Engage in physical activity, and I know I feel like a doctor telling you this, but walking, stretching, yoga, qigong, weight training, running, and different forms of exercise all help to create space. Here's my favorite: limit news intake. It helps to limit your watching and digesting of news and social media, especially these days. Sometimes when I watch the news, it feels like some evil force is dumping toxic sludge over my head. News tends to be negative, instills fear, and diminishes hope. Not all news, of course, but enough of it. So limit news intake. And be around positive people, especially people who light you up. If you choose to be isolated, you are isolated not only from other people, but you're isolated from yourself, and that is a lonely place to be. We are mirrors for one another. So talking with people, enjoying an activity together, laughing together, or just sitting back and watching people increases your positive energy and outlook. And it also helps to appreciate nature. It's a low-cost way to create a positive environment in your life. Take a walk in nature and observe all that is around you. Look at the trees, the leaves, the flowers, and sky as if you're looking at them for the first time. Listen to the birds and watch the birds. Study the intricate parts of a leaf. Watch insects go about their day. Take a canoe trip. Nature helps slow you down and helps you see something bigger than you or whatever difficulties you might be facing. Someone once told me that hugging a tree creates a good energy for you. So a few years ago, I was hiking up Sandia Peak in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I thought I would try it. I picked a tree, and I looked around to make sure no one was looking. And you know, I hugged the tree for a few seconds, and I felt good. I know the tree appreciated it. Unfortunately for me, it was a fir tree, and when I backed away, I saw sap on my t-shirt. So if you're going to do that, use caution. You know, taking care of a garden or a lawn, if you have one, is very essential as well. I find that mowing my lawn, trimming hedges, and trees keeps me connected to the earth. It keeps me grounded. And seek out inspiring quotes. Find and write down inspiring quotes or lines from poems. Good quotes that give you hope and inspiration. You can find them on the internet, or maybe you've been collecting them like me. I love good quotes because they feed my soul, help me to reflect, and think differently about some things. Here are some of my favorites out of many. Some see things that are and ask why. I see things that never were and ask why not. That's really from George Bernard Shaw, the playwright, made famous by Senator Robert Kennedy. And from the Gospel of Matthew. What do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? Native Americans have great sayings. This is from the Dakotas. We will be known forever by the tracks we leave. People may not remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. Maya Angelou. And spiritual teacher Ram Dass. We are all just walking each other home. And also, I'm going to add to this, seek out inspiring stories. As communicators, we tell the stories of our sisters, don't we? And some of those stories are incredibly inspiring. And I have to say that I've had the privilege over the years of telling some great stories of the Sisters of Mercy. Some incredible stories. Some sisters are doing great things. Some sisters are doing little things with great love. Like Sister Grace Miller at the House of Mercy in Rochester. It's a homeless shelter. And here's how she started it many years ago. She was driving through inner city Rochester. It was a very, very cold night. And she saw a man sitting on the sidewalk freezing. So she went up to the man and said, "We have to do something for you." So she found a Catholic church, knocked on the door, and the priest refused to allow the man to sleep in the church. So she went to another Catholic church, and finally, the man was able to be taken in and sleep in the church. And she said to herself, someone's got to help these people. And she was the one. And today she has one of the most successful ministries in Rochester. I've been there a number of times. It's a great experience when you go there. It is touching, it is moving, you learn so much. And she is so filled with incredible stories and with the work that she's doing. Sister Bernadette Geyser in Buffalo. I just did this story not too long ago. Here's a sister celebrating her 70th Jubilee. And she, for many years, made doll clothes. She's a seamstress, and she would make clothes for these little dolls. And then she would sell them and give the money she earned from the sales to help ministries in Buffalo, run by the Sisters of Mercy. Well, she was so upset with what's happening at the border between U.S. and Mexico with the migrants. She is so angered about it, and she says, I have to do something. And she retired from the doll-making business years ago, but she came out of retirement to make more outfits for dolls and raffle them off. And you know what she did? She raised $500 from the raffle. And she made sure that that money went to Ascension House, which takes care of migrants at the border. And there's Sister Bernadette Bell in Erie, 87 years old. And she's looking always for the next thing. She thinks nothing of hopping into a car at 87 years old, driving from Erie to Massachusetts to go to a retreat center that she's been going to for years. She thinks nothing of participating into Take Back the Sight prayer vigils in Erie. That is a collaborative effort with the 3 religious communities. And these sisters go into often very dangerous neighborhoods to reclaim the site of a homicide for nonviolence, peace, and love. And then there's Sister Mary Paul from Erie. She grew up in Rochester, and we did a series in our news magazine for a few years called Before Mercy. And the series was about sisters and what they did before they entered the Sisters of Mercy. And this would be for sisters who didn't enter out of high school or college. No, these were the women who worked in a job for a number of years. And then they decided to be a Sister of Mercy. Well, what did she do before Mercy? She was homeless. And the Sisters of Mercy took her in and helped her with an education. She wanted to be a nurse, so they helped her with that. And she worked in a hospital for a number of years. And eventually, she became a Sister of Mercy. These are inspiring stories, and I know you have them too. Look for them to share them with your readers. Do things you want to do, within reason, of course. Visit someplace you always wanted to visit. Take a class you always wanted to take. And have fun of it. And remember this, it's not so much what you're doing, it's the experience of it. That's what you're going to remember, and that is what teaches you. Listen to music that uplifts your soul. It really does help to appreciate music, but not just any music. What music lifts you up? What music makes you happy? Makes you want to dance? What music brightens your day? I love all kinds of music, and I got that from my dad. When I lived at home, he would play different kinds of music on his stereo, things like classical and show tunes and Mitch Miller and polkas and Glenn Miller and hymns and so much more. So when I started to listen to music on my stereo at home, rock music, my dad would give me his opinion. You call that music? And I said, well, yeah, I do. Today, if you pass my office at work, I could be listening to Native American, polkas, hymns, movie soundtracks, rock, classical, big band, Hindu chant, folk music, and everything in between, except free-form jazz. I could never figure that stuff out, so I don't play that. Listen to music that you enjoy and lifts your spirits, and if it makes you want to dance, well, then why don't you do it? I love this quote from philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who said, and those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. These are just a handful of ways that can create in us an environment that opens us to ideas and energy and creativity, things that give life good juice. And now, the moment you've been waiting for, the 5 ways to live an inspiring life. Now, these are just 5 of many ways. These aren't the only ways. Have a spiritual practice. Most people equate a spiritual practice with going to church on Sunday, and it is. But there is much more, and I'm inviting you to consider to create other opportunities to expand your spirituality. Some of these you likely already do, but it bears mentioning them. For example, pray. What kind of prayer works best for you? Several here likely have a morning prayer, maybe an evening prayer. You go to Mass, perhaps you say the Rosary. Those are all good things. Like for me, I have found helpful talking to God as in a conversation with a friend. Centering prayer, which is a form of meditation using a repetitive mantra, a phrase, to take you into silence and allow you to enjoy God's presence, is another powerful way. A mantra could be something as simple, Jesus healer, be with me. Or it can be one of the ones that's often used in centering prayer, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, have mercy on me. Look to other traditions, too, for other ways to stretch your spiritual awareness. Meditate. Meditation can center you and slow you down. And it can bring you a reduced blood pressure, and it can make you calmer and better able to process life. Meditating in silence for only 10 minutes a day has benefits. Spiritual teacher Ram Dass says, the quieter you become, the more you can hear. Be mindful. Too many of us live life way too fast. There are deadlines, and there are days when we have these endless to-do lists, and then we have stuff at home. Well, we live in a culture that supports that. The culture tells us that doing nothing and slowing down is a waste of time and not productive. A few years ago, I visited the Taos Pueblo in Taos, New Mexico. And I visited a pueblo in which an older man was selling Native American jewelry that he had made. As I browsed, I pointed to a piece of jewelry and asked him, how long did this take to make? And I was expecting some answer like 8 days, 2 days, 8 hours, an hour. But without an expression, he just looked at me and said, as long as it takes. He was saying that he takes the time as it comes. He slows down to focus what is in front of him. What a lesson. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk, says it takes him an hour to drink a small cup of tea. He takes the cup of tea in through the senses. He smells the tea slowly. He sips the tea slowly, and then he savors its taste. He thinks of nothing else but that tea. That's mindfulness. Keep a journal. Write down your feelings, insights, experiences, dreams. These are all parts of your life that need to be expressed. And it's quite interesting to check your journal entries from a year ago or longer and discover common threads from your experiences. Work with a spiritual director. Spiritual directors accompany a person on his or her spiritual journey, and they listen to the experience of their directees. Such a relationship is helpful to integrate in your life how the Spirit is moving in you. I've been blessed. I have the same spiritual director, a Catholic priest, for 36 years. Go on a retreat. Religious communities everywhere offer retreats and other ways to grow spiritually. Read spiritual books. We have Richard Rohr here 4 years ago. He's got some great books. Joan Chittister, of course, just spoke to us. She's got some marvelous books. Find a spiritual writer that connects with you. And here's another one. Listen to guided meditations. You can find them on YouTube. I use an app called Insight Timer, which has hundreds and hundreds of different kind of guided meditation for almost any occasion. Never stop learning. Mahatma Gandhi said, live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross said, learning life's lessons is not about making your life perfect, but about seeing life as it was meant to be. Composer Michael Legrand said, the more I live, the more I learn. The more I learn, the more I realize I know less. Be open to learning. I'm going to share with you a quick story about the very first class I had when I was teaching homiletics to permanent deacons in the Catholic diocese and their wives. They were already ordained a few months before, and now this was the fall. And they added my course, homiletics, because they thought they needed some skills in public speaking when they deliver sermons. So I put the course together, and I had, I think, 8 sessions over a period of months with this group. And we got along well. It was fun for me to teach and to share information and knowledge and to have them go up there and give their sermons. All worked well. And then came time for the last class. And before the last class began, which was them giving their sermons to show me and others what they've learned, one of the students came up to me and said, I want to say something at the end. And I said, okay. And me thinking, oh, they probably want to give me some kind of gift, and thank me for the 8 sessions and all of that. Oh, we learned so much, So then the class ends, and the guy who was going to say something said, we're not going to say anything. I said, okay. So I was the only instructor who handed out evaluations. And they filled out the evaluations, and I thanked them, and I had a picture taken with my class, And I took the evaluations in my packet, and I went downstairs where my office was in the diocesan building, and I said, oh, I wonder what they thought. Holy cow, they ripped me apart. I couldn't get over it. They ripped me apart. And you know what the reason was? They said, well, we're already ordained. We don't need that class. We were insulted. And I was angered. You know what I was angered about? I was angered because they didn't want to learn. Never stop learning. I also learned a lesson in humility, by the way. So learn from yourself, learn from your life. What has your own life taught you? Who are you? Why do you think and act the way you do? Where did you come from? Where do you want to go? What have been some of the great times in your life, the inspirations and the learnings that you've taken in? What have been some of the difficult times? Journal about what you find. Serve others. Muhammad Ali, the famous boxer, said a lot. You know this. I mean, he was very, very quotable. But here's one of the things that he said that a lot of people don't know. Service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. Author Mandy Hale said, there is nothing more beautiful than someone who goes out of their way to make life beautiful for others. Mahatma Gandhi said, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Serving others is ingrained in many of our great religious traditions, and certainly in our religious communities. In serving others, we become the face of God for them. And we feel good to serve others, don't we? I remember a quote from the movie First Knight, which is about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. Engraved into the surface of the table around which the knights would gather is this saying, by serving others, we are made free. Serving others can be something as simple as smiling at someone or saying a kind word or listening to someone without judgment. It could be working in a soup kitchen or Habitat for Humanity or reading books to children at the neighborhood art house. Try giving your time in a ministry sponsored by your own religious community. Or it could mean giving up an afternoon to help someone do some work at their house so they don't have to feel so overwhelmed. I have a relative who's not among my favorites. He's a nice guy. He would do anything for anyone, including me. But for some reason, he just gets under my skin. He's from out of town, and he stopped in Erie on his way to Rochester for a family graduation party. My wife and sons went along, and I stayed home. They took my wife's car, so his car was left behind in my driveway. Well, on that Sunday, the graduation party, I was home, and I decided to wash and wax my car in the driveway. And after I finished waxing it, I picked up my head, and I looked behind my car, and there was his car. It really needed tender, loving care. I doubt he even washed it or even thought about it. So I walked over, I looked inside, I walked around the car, and I determined that if I decided to do this, it would be a major job. But I said to myself, what the heck? So I decided to do it. I got myself another beer, turned the music that I was listening to a little louder, and I gave his car the works. When I was done, that car looked like it came out of a showroom. And when he returned, he didn't notice that I had done this to his car, washed and waxed it, cleaned the inside and outside, until he was leaving on Monday. He was absolutely shocked. He must have shaken my hand 50 times, each time thanking me for the job I did on his car. I thought I was going to get an injured rotator cuff. I felt great that I did something for him that I would not normally do, and he was incredibly surprised. The opportunities to serve others are all around us if we have the eyes to see them. You gotta laugh. You've gotta laugh. When was the last time you really laughed? I mean, not chuckled or snorted, but laughed out loud at something to the point where tears came to your eyes. Maybe you fell off the chair. You gotta laugh. Too many of us take life too seriously, and we have to find humor in almost everything. Life is sometimes hard, and laughter softens the edges. It makes life easier. Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning about his experiences in a Nazi concentration camp, said, "I never would have made it if I could not have laughed. It lifted me momentarily out of this horrible situation, just enough to make it livable." You may have noticed that I like to laugh. And I love to laugh and be around people who laugh. Laugh at yourself, especially when you make mistakes. Go easy on yourself. You're human. Maybe you're in your own communities, you have a story or two from something that happened and you laugh about. Like, I remember 4 or 5 years ago now, I was putting together this picture directory for the sisters in Erie, Buffalo, Rochester, and Pittsburgh. And I had to arrange for new pictures to be taken of all of our sisters in the areas. And my job was to not only set it up, but encourage the sisters to have their picture taken. Well, one sister in particular, who was a friend of mine from one of our areas, said to me, "Well, I'm not going to have my picture taken." And I said, "Well, why not?" "Well, I want the one in the directory that I took 14 years ago." And I said, "Well, why would you want that? Because, people want to see what you look like now." "Oh, no. The one from 14 years ago is the picture I want because that's how I really look." As if what I'm seeing now is some kind of mirage. Laughter decreases stress and lowers the blood pressure. So think about it. What makes you laugh? Show gratitude. Self-help author Melody Beattie said this about gratitude. "Gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow." Motivational author Zig Ziglar shared this thought: "Gratitude is the healthiest of all human emotions. The more you express gratitude for what you have, the more likely you will have even more to express gratitude for. And author Eckhart Tolle said, "It is through gratitude for the present moment that the spiritual dimension of life just opens up." Now, I know some of you have heard this before, we all have. Have an attitude of gratitude. And too many forget to be thankful for others and for what we have and for God being in our lives and taking care of us. You know, for some people, the only time they express gratitude is at Thanksgiving. And you've seen this. You know, we all gather with our family. They come in from out of town, and here we all are. And somebody who's in authority says, "Okay, let's join hands and thank God for the blessings." And for some people, it's the only time they do this. Yet life's blessings happen in every moment, even if we don't see them or acknowledge them. And if someone does something nice for you, remember to thank them, maybe verbally or write them a note or a card. My mother was the president of the Rosary Society of St. Hedwig Church in Erie, Pennsylvania for years and years. And she ran 2 very, very successful fundraisers each year to raise money for the church, her card parties. And one of the things that she had for the card parties were these donations from businesses in the area. And she would get these donated items and raffle them off. And she would have my father drive her around to all the businesses weeks before the card party. And she'd keep a log of who donated what. Well, they were very successful. And the week after the card party, I saw her sitting at the kitchen table with all of these cards, writing thank you notes in the cards to all of the businesses who donated items. And a few years ago, when I was selling their house and going through their items, I found this box, and in the box were these cards and letters, and I saw this card from the Pepsi Bottling Company in Erie. Apparently, they had given a donation of a few cases of Pepsi to be raffled off. And the card said, "Mrs. Loncki, we just wanted to send you a thank you card for your thank you card." Because we donate a lot of items, but nobody bothers to thank us. And thank you for your card and the kind message that you sent to us. And it was signed by the person who was in charge of the company at the time. Gratitude begets gratitude. I keep a journal, and a friend of mine keeps a gratitude journal. Before she goes to bed at night, she writes down all of the things that happened and expresses thanks to God for those things. So, have a spiritual practice. Never stop learning. Serve others. You gotta laugh and show gratitude. These are all ways to live an inspiring life. They show that God is working with us to see God's face in our souls in new ways. If we take the time to live more inspired and passionate lives, there is a good chance that we will be open to our inner selves and to the God who waits to help us be who we are, where we are. Living in the energy of what lights us up, we can be better communicators, better doers of the gospel, and better lovers and animators of all creation. We more easily see a God who delights in us, no matter who we are or what we have done. God's love for us never changes. It always invites us to be healed and to be light for other people. Francis of Assisi, my favorite saint, whose feast day we celebrate today, once said, "A single sunbeam is enough to drive away many shadows." Can we be that sunbeam for others? Catherine of Siena once said, "Be who God made you to be and set the world on fire." God made everyone for that. Like in the Roman Catholic Church, the Episcopal Church celebrates a Eucharistic liturgy. The last line of the Eucharistic prayer at an Episcopal service is most meaningful for me. The priest lifts the elements of bread and wine, which have now become the body and blood of Jesus to be shared, says these words, "The gifts of God for the people of God." These great gifts of a loving God help us to become what we receive at the Eucharistic table. They help us to be inspired people of light. We can be the prophets that Sister Joan talked about the other day. The world is starving for people who are inspired. The world thirsts for people who have hope. The world aches for people who take to heart what Jesus gave us in the gospel and make it real for them so they can do it too. Realize that life is short, so stay awake for it and know that in the process we are transformed. So what does that look like? Very much what our charisms and teachings in our religious communities call us to. With the Sisters of Mercy for whom I work, the charism is mercy. And that relates to what we call our critical concerns: immigration, women, anti-racism, care for the earth, and nonviolence, all, of course, rooted in the gospel of Jesus. And all of this means that we walk in the shoes of others to share their experience and do what we can to make their lives better. I want to share with you the Litany of Witness by Philip Lund. And if you are comfortable, you can say the refrain along with me. It goes like this. To the refugee family seeking a safe place for their children's dreams, we say, I am with you in this. To the trans teenager longing for a world that accepts them for who they are, we say, I am with you in this. To the black parents wondering, when will the lives of their children truly matter, we say, I am with you in this. To the lonely, the frightened, the dispossessed, we say, I am with you in this. To the bullied, the battered, the broken down, we say, I am with you in this. To the hungry and the homeless, to the silenced and the shamed, to the weary and the worried, we say, I am with you in this. To all those for whom your disheveled heart is aching, we say, I am with you in this. When we know ourselves, we see ourselves in others, and that is our challenge. That is how we become better communicators and lovers of the gospel. And that is what we bring to our jobs as communicators for women religious. Because when we are open to God working in us and true to who we are by living in our truth, and when we allow the challenge of the gospel of Jesus and the charisms of our religious communities to really become a part of us, and when we are light for others, we stand tall. We become the face of God for others. And then we really are the gifts of God for the people of God. Amen.